What is going on, YouTube? Working on another custom today, and today I am working on another Dodge Daytona. So if you recall, I did one of these a while ago, and this is actually the windshield from the one I did a while ago because I sprayed the clear coat on it and it messed it all up. So I'm going to attempt to fix that. There was a viewer that suggested a way to fix that, so I'm going to give that a shot. So in my other video, I thought the stance of the car was just too tall, so I may try to lower this one if I can. It might be a little bit difficult since I still want this to roll down the track, but we're going to give it a shot. So let's see what we can do. Let's get this thing apart and start getting to work on it. There it is, all taken apart. I am going to sand this one down and then put the citrus strip on there. So let's get that paint off there. All I'm really looking to do here is scuff up the paint and wear down that clear coat a little bit. These new Hotwheels have a pretty tough clear coat that takes the citrus strip a long time to break through. So scuffing it up helps that process out quite a bit. And I'm using a pretty aggressive sandpaper. I think this is 80 grit, which is just some cheap sandpaper I found at the dollar store, but it works pretty good. I think that's good enough for now, and let's get to stripping that paint. As usual, I'm using the citrus strip paint stripping gel. I just use a small brush and make sure I apply a pretty heavy coat all over the car and let it do its job. I haven't used it yet, but from the videos that I've seen where people are using the aircraft stripper to remove the paint from these cars, it looks like the aircraft stripper probably works a little bit faster than the citrus strip. So if you're in a big hurry to finish one of these projects, you probably want to go with the aircraft stripper. If you're not in a big hurry, then I guess it doesn't really matter what you use as long as the paint gets off that car. The citrus strip actually worked pretty quickly on this one, and I'm sure sanding it helped the process quite a bit. But once the paint's all crusty and nasty, I just go over it with a brush and knock as much off as I can, and then wash it under some warm soapy water and go over it with some steel wool, and it comes out looking like this. All clean and ready for some primer. The primer I'm using today is the Krylon Color Max White Primer. Once the primer was on, I went over the entire car with Krylon Color Masters Satin Bright White, and I really like both these paints. I've no complaints, and both of them go on really smooth, and they work really well for what I want to do with this car. I'm eventually going to use some Duplicolor metal cast paint on this, but there's a few things I need to do before I get to that step. I want to keep the wing white, so I taped the wing off with some 3M tape, and then I sprayed the entire car with the Krylon Cover Max Aluminum Metallic, which was the same paint I used on the 71 Charger build. I am a huge fan of this paint, especially when you take a look at it in the sunlight, and it's a fantastic undercoat for the Duplicolor paints. My goal for this build is to attempt to recreate the Bobby Isaac number 71 K&K Insurance Dodge Charger Daytona from 1970. Although I'm going to change things up a little bit and go with more of a burnt orange and see how it turns out. I'm sure I've said it before, and I probably say it every time I use Duplicolor metal cast paint. I really like this paint. This was probably my 7th coat. I finally got the color I wanted, and it turned out amazing, especially in the sunlight. Very, very happy with the way this paint came out. Once I had the paint where I wanted it, it was time to remove the tape. Now the orange paint at this point is still wet, and I'm trying to get that tape off there as fast as I can because I don't want the tape to absorb the orange paint and ruin my intended paint job. Which it didn't, and I was able to get it off there fast enough, but it can be a little bit tricky getting that tape off there if you don't leave some access to grab onto to remove it. After letting the paint dry for about 24 hours, it was time to put the decals on. These decals were picked up off of eBay from RWNEFF1, who I've purchased quite a few decals from. And this was a little trick that Dave Akers told me about that actually works fantastic. Instead of submerging the decal in water, just place it on top of a sponge. The backing will eventually absorb the water, and you'll be able to remove it from the backing fairly easily. These decals fought me tooth and nail for this entire build. I think there were a few reasons why. I was doing this build in my garage, and it was about 88 degrees in there, and the microset was evaporating real quickly. And these decals were super thin, which is what you want from these water slide decals, but they were so thin that once you placed them down, you had one chance to move them, and if you missed that chance, they were stuck. And once they got stuck, you could not move them for anything, and if you did, you would end up crinkling them or messing them up because they were so thin. As difficult as these decals were, I was actually really happy with the way they turned out at the end, but getting there was a struggle. So I really want to lower this thing because I think the stance for this car is just way too high. But there's a couple problems I'm going to have here. First off, I've got to deal with this on the bottom of the car. So this hangs down way too low. So if I lower it, the wheels won't touch the ground and it's not going to roll. And kind of the same issue with the front. So this is all going to have to be filed down. And as far as I can anyway. Because if that's not filed down, I'm not going to be able to drop the stance of the car. Which is the ultimate goal. Our second problem is these wheels are too wide. And if I lower it, it's going to hit the body. And again, it won't roll if it's rubbing up against the body. So I found these wheels. They're off of a 64 Nova wagon that are substantially shorter than the other ones. The idea is to fit these up inside the body. You'll be able to lower it down on it, and then we lower our stance with it hopefully still looking good. Another problem, these are just not wide enough for the body, so that needs to be fixed also. And it goes the same with the front, just way shorter wheelbase now. I'm gonna have to hack away at this body and narrow it quite a bit. So let's see if I can do it and make it look halfway decent. So let's get started. I'm just using a flat needle file to remove as much material as I can to make sure these wheels and axles will fit. I actually think I took off a little bit too much, as there was plenty of room for these wheels and axles to fit in there. I ended up removing quite a bit of material, so I secured the wheels and axles in with some JB Weld, hoping the JB Weld would help regain some strength to that base. I did a quick test fit to see how the car looked, and I was able to lower the stance, and I got the right height I wanted, but the wheels were just way too narrow, and it didn't look quite right. And I ended up snapping the base, ruining all that work I put into it. So I eventually found another base and started over again. This time I didn't narrow the base or anything. I just adjusted the height of the wheels inside the base, and it looked all right. But the angle was just a little bit too off. It was a little bit too high in the back and too low in the front. So I had to play around with it a little bit. Although that is kind of a cool picture right there. I think it is time to put this back together. I think I finally got the base where I needed it, and it's time for the best part of the video. I just went over the interior with some white primer. I think it looks fine. It actually kind of gives it that little cloth looking look. I didn't want it all shiny or anything like that. It's kind of a dull white, and I think it looks all right actually. The base, I went ahead and painted the base. I got to finish up going over the pipes and making it look all chrome and everything. I gotta touch up the back end a little bit. My paint got a little out of control, but I'll go over that with a chrome pen and fix that up. But I think it's ready to go. I actually got some new glass from another one of these. Without further delay, let's get this thing back together. This build has been quite the challenge, trying to lower it and get that right stance. But I think I finally got it, and I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. I'm using my 0.050 driver with my 2.56 button head screws to screw it all back together. Now, especially on this one, I am just going to get it on there to where it's snug. I don't need it super tight, because if I get it too tight and it pushes those wheels up against the body, it's not going to roll. So I'm just trying to get it in there just enough to get it to hold well and get everything lined up where it needs to be. All right, this has been quite the build. I'm glad it's finally complete. So let's take a look and see how we look. Oh yeah, check that out. Wheels actually roll. I was able to get that gap moved down quite a bit because it had such a high stance to begin with. And yeah, it looks pretty good if I do say so myself. And best of all, the wheels spin. I think it looks pretty good. I really like the paint on this. That orange is pretty impressive, and it came out really well. Decals went on real easy, and really happy with this one. I think this one turned out a lot better than the other Dodge Daytona I did. I really like it. Let's go take some glamour shots and get some up-close views of this thing. So why do another Dodge Daytona? Well, I wasn't really pleased with the first one I did, and I thought I could have done a heck of a lot better. So I kind of took it as a challenge and came up with this thing that I'm very pleased with. I think this one's a lot better than the first one I did. And I just really like these old Dodge Daytonas and Plymouth Superbirds and making them look like old NASCARs. I have a good time with it, and hopefully you guys do too. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to do my NASCAR history lesson for the day, but the driver of this car is Bobby Isaac. If you don't know who he is, he was one heck of a race car driver, and not only that, he did a lot of stuff outside of NASCAR. So go check him out. There'll be a link in the description down below that'll go to a 20-minute video talking about him. If you're into that sort of thing, I strongly recommend you check it out. He has quite the NASCAR story for sure. Also, before I go head on over to Toon Tracks Racing. Check out Jason as he does some awesome diecast racing, and get an update on his fight with leukemia. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we will see you on the next one.